Welcome to Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode 105. Hi, I'm Jill. Thanks for joining us today.
And I'm Chris. Jill and I are your co-hosts and the founders of Becoming Ellie Community.
I know you're wondering why we're called Becoming Ellie. Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who wrestled Thor and beat him. Chris and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie.
That's right. You can find out more about us at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
Be sure to sign up for our newsletter when you're at the website. That way you'll know about new episodes and anything else that's new with the Becoming Ellie community.
You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Hey, Chris, this episode is a great conversation with Karen Martel about a lot of things, including hormones and menopause. We cover a lot today.
Yes, we sure do. And I want to remind everyone that we are not giving you medical advice. We are just providing you with information, and you should discuss your health concerns with your health practitioners.
Yes. So if you find today's episode interesting, we suggest you explore these topics a bit further and then discuss with the appropriate person. Let's go to the podcast. Karen Martel is a certified hormone specialist and transformational nutrition coach and women's weight loss expert. Karen is the host of the top-rated women's health podcast, The Other Side of Weight Loss, where she helps women to unlock the mysteries of female fat loss and hormone imbalance.
After struggling with her own health issues, Karen was determined to help bring her knowledge to others with a bold new approach to women's hormone health and weight management. Karen's passion lies in helping women balance and optimize their hormones in peri and postmenopause and breakthrough weight loss resistance.
Welcome, Karen. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, ladies. I'm really just so happy that you're doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
There needs to be more of us. There needs to be more of us just spreading the good word on, hey, it doesn't have to be bad. We can all age very gracefully without all these problems that so many of us are having.
That's good to know. So you deal with so many things that matter to women over 50 that it's kind of hard to know where to start. So I guess let's just start with what happens to women when they start into perimenopause or even postmenopause.
Yes. So perimenopause actually starts a lot earlier than ladies think it does. And they've been in it. So for women in menopause, you've been in this for a long time, whether you know it or not, but hormones really start to drop off in our late 30s and early 40s and can continue like that. For perimenopause can go anywhere from a couple years to 10 to 12 years long. So if you are suffering with hormonal loss, it can be 10 to 12 years and can even carry on into menopause. I can't tell you how many women I've worked with that are in their 60s that are still experiencing hot flashes and night sweats and weight gain and foggy brain. And there's things that can get better, but most of it will continue to get worse as you age unless you do something about it.
Right. You definitely paint a scary picture if you don't take care of it, right? You talk about balancing women's hormones. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes. What I say to women is, when you're in your fertile years and you're in your 20s and even in your 30s, there are so many things that you can do to naturally balance your hormones that don't consist of taking actual hormones. There's a lot you can do with diet, fitness, supplementation, stress reduction, and you can really balance out those hormones. Because right now most women have some sort of hormonal imbalance. There's been very few women, even in their fertile years, that I have seen their hormone profile and been like, oh, you're perfect. I've seen thousands of them. There's maybe like a couple where I've been like, wow, that's actually pretty good. So because of all the toxic load that's happening in our environment right now, the stress, we're not eating well, we're not exercising, typically not everywhere, but it's really affecting women's hormones. So there's lots that those women can do. When we get into our 40s, 50s, and beyond, there isn't any diet or any supplementation that will bring back your hormones. And I think that needs to be really, really clear, because there's a lot of women out there that think they can get rid of their perimenopause and menopausal symptoms by simply exercising more and dieting harder. And those things are very important. You do need to eat well. You do need to exercise ever more so when you're in menopause, because your metabolism changes, the hormones have changed. So yes, 100% that foundation still needs to be there, but you can't diet your way out of ovarian failure, which is what's happening. Once the ovaries stop producing hormones, we will produce a small amount from our fat cells and from our adrenal system. We typically, as women nowadays, are quite highly stressed out. And so your adrenal system, which is what pumps out your stress hormones mostly, if you are highly stressed out, or let's say you're doing high amounts of cardio, you're just, you're being a typical, whether you still have children in the house or you're running around taking care of them, or you're still working, whatever it might be, if you've got a lot of stress going on, your body's going to prefer to make that cortisol, your stress hormone, first and foremost, because that's our survival hormone. So it'll put all those other hormones on the back burner. So your ovaries stop making progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. Your fat cells will start making an inflammatory estrogen. This is why a lot of women will gain weight in perimenopause and menopause. And then the adrenal system is supposed to make small amounts of progesterone, estrogen, DHEA, and testosterone. But if you're stressed out, it's not going to be making very much of those. And even if you're not stressed out, for a lot of women, what they make isn't enough to optimize their health and aging. Because once our hormones are gone, it is literally a process of dying in the body. And I know that sounds harsh and depressing and stuff. It's just the way it is. A lot of people will say, well, I don't want to replace my hormones because it's not natural. It's natural for me to go into menopause. We never lived to menopause up until, I think It was like 200 years ago or 300 years ago. Average age was at the end of perimenopause. Women would typically die.
Was the average age in the early 1900s. When my grandmother was born, 48 was the average lifespan of a woman.
Yes. So there you go. Right. And so it's like,
people don't think about that.
No. And so unfortunately, it's not very natural. It's kind of like saying, well, if you've got heart disease, well, that's natural. We're just going to let you go because that's, it's just a part of aging, right? We're not going to give you any medication. We're going to give you surgery because it's natural. We do what we can. And so when it comes to, hormone balancing, once you get into perimenopause, menopause, and you're just simply losing those hormones because of ovarian failure, the balancing part comes with actually taking on bioidentical hormone therapy. And there's a lot of misinformation around that. A lot of women, I've made the mistake, ladies. I'll tell you this. I made the mistake. Last week, I decided to look for, I don't have any free Facebook group. And I just wanted to look at what was out there for free Facebook groups for menopause and perimenopause. So I found a couple and I joined them because I wanted to see just what women were saying and give me ideas for my own podcast. And, what are people's pain points? Oh my, I should not have done that because there's this one, it had 17,000 women in this group. And it was, there was 100 posts a day. And it was women talking about how badly they're suffering. And it just went on and on and on. And like so bad that it was depressing. Like women were ready to literally go jump off a bridge because they were suffering so badly. And it was all these women would comment in support of that and with their own complaints. And very few were actually saying, why don't you try bioidentical hormone therapy? And I'm just thinking, all of you women are choosing right now to suffer because there is so much that you can do to not have to go through any of this. And these were women that were checking themselves into hospitals because they were having panic attacks and they haven't slept for a year and they've gained 20 pounds and they've got anxiety and depression and they hate their husband and they hate their children. And I'm just going, oh my, and I'm just wanting to scream at them. What are you doing? Go get some help. Listen to my podcast, but I can't.
Well, right. Yeah. When you join those groups, you can't just go in and say, hey, I have a podcast.
No, you can't.
Well, since you mentioned your podcast, what's the name of your podcast? Our listeners, I'm sure at this moment are wondering.
It's called The Other Side of Weight Loss, which I think I'm going to change because it's so funny because I just realized that probably when most people hear that, they actually think the other side of once you've lost the weight. And my intentions with it from the beginning were, no, the other side of, all the advice we hear is calorie counting and exercise. And this is what you got to do. It's the next best diet. And it seems like that's where all the focus is. And so I wanted to talk about all the other aspects that are within that puzzle of trying to figure out what your personal body needs in order to lose weight. So that could be psychology, spirituality, it could be diet, it could be hormones, it could be gut. So I go through all of these different things to help women to find their weight loss code. And so that was the intention of the name of the podcast. And it's pretty stupid that I never thought about the fact that it could be thought of in that other way, because I really didn't.
So, yeah. But the other side of weight loss is then something other than just eat less, move more.
Yes, exactly.
You're overweight because it's your fault that you eat too much.
Your weakness.
Yeah, exactly. Because I came from a history of, I always ate well, I exercised. And after having my first kid, I just kept packing weight on. And I had all these crazy symptoms pop up. And I was doing every diet under the sun and working out like crazy and hired the personal trainer. And I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And I was finally, and I'm 33 years old. Nobody would have said, hey, it's your hormones. And sure enough, it was. And I thought, how many other women are out there doing what they're told? They are eating well, they are exercising, and they're not losing weight. They're only gaining weight, or they can't lose weight. Like they have weight loss resistance. And so I really wanted to have a place for women like that.
How do we find out what our hormone status is? So do we just go to our doctor and ask for a blood test, or?
So there's different testing for there's different hormone. There's 3 different types of hormone testing. They're all going to give you something different. It's a different picture on each one. When you are in menopause, so that means a year without your period, you can absolutely go to your doctor and ask them to do blood testing on your hormones on any day. Because you've got no period, blood work will test what's called bound hormone levels. They're bound to a protein that shuttles the hormone around the body, but it has to get off that protein in order for the body to use it. So in women that are still cycling, those results can be skewed because women can have a lot of bound up hormones, but they don't have a lot of available hormones. And so we really want to see what's available for them to use. So if you're still cycling, you want to do either what's called saliva hormone testing. And so that's obviously through saliva, but that's only going to test free hormone levels. You can test also through urine, which it gives you the biggest picture, the urine. So that's going to test how you break these hormones down. If you're a ways into menopause, that's not going to be great because if you have no hormones, it's not going to show how you're breaking them down. So if you're on hormone replacement, you certainly could. You can't do saliva if you're on hormone replacement because it overshows. Blood work tends to undershow, and urine is kind of in between. It's not 100%, but it will show how you're breaking it down. So for cycling women, I like to do either the urine test or the saliva. And then for menopausal women, if they've just lost their period, I'll have them do Dutch with blood so we can get a comparison.
And Dutch is urine test.
Sorry, yes, Dutch is urine. Yeah. So that's the company is Dutch. That's the one that I use. So I do it just kind of depends on the person. But you definitely, your doctor's going to tell you, at any time, oh yeah, sure, I'll just test your hormones. Or if they even are willing to, a lot of them aren't.
Right.
But they'll just tell you to go ahead. And if you've still got a period, you really want to test it on a certain day of your cycle to get a really accurate picture of what's going on, because our hormones fluctuate wildly throughout the month. And same with when we're closer to menopause, it gets really wild. So you have to be very careful about what day you test it on.
So are you saying that if a person is a good ways post-menopause,
I would do blood work.
Okay, but you could still test your hormones. There would be some value in still doing that.
I think there is, because you will have the odd woman that has okay amounts of estrogen, for instance, even though she's in menopause, or testosterone. About half of the women will lose testosterone. The other half don't. So you do want to get a good picture. And I always think that if you're going to do hormone replacement therapy, you want a baseline. Even though you go on symptoms, because everybody's different and some people will need more than others. And so having a number isn't great, but you want to be able to go, okay, I feel like crap right now, and my estrogen's at 50. I'm going to start hormone replacement. And then in 3 months, I'll retest and see where it is. And if I feel fantastic, then I can be like, oh, I feel fantastic when my estrogen's at 150. I'm going to make sure I keep it there. And so you have that to go on moving forward into your life.
Do you have some basic tips for women who are dealing with perimenopause or symptoms from menopause, where they're just not feeling right? Is it, what's the basic tips that you might offer?
Okay. So I do have my own little protocol.
Okay.
That it really takes everything that's most important into consideration, because a lot of women, they want to just go hop on bioidentical hormones and they think that that's going to be the answer to all their problems. And it's not. You really have to prepare your body for that. And so, things like how I was just talking about your stress levels, like if you are pumping out cortisol like crazy, bringing in a bunch of hormones, your body's not going to take those hormones in very well. And so there's a lot of things like that, like diet. If you don't have a good gut, your hormones, you're going to start to recirculate that estrogen, because you need a healthy gut and healthy bacteria to process and eliminate the estrogen once you've used it. If you don't have a good gut and you don't have a good liver, your body's going to start to recirculate that used estrogen. And a lot of women will then gain weight and they don't feel good. They'll have tender breasts. So I like women when they're thinking about, starting hormones, or even if they're not, and they just want to sail through as best they can without using hormones, start as early as you can. Don't wait until you're a hot mess before you start doing these things, because most of us will only turn to diet and exercise, even though we know better. I do think we know better now, but we still, because that's easiest, right? It's easiest to go, oh, keto's the next best diet. I'm just going to go do that because I can't seem to get rid of this weight and I don't feel great. And that or this brand new exercise program. Ooh, yeah, I'm going to go do that. That's the answer. And and it's so frustrating because they'll see some results maybe at first, but then it just goes right back and they're going, what? So start looking at your hormones as soon as you can. If you're in your 40s, don't hesitate to start replacing the hormones. Don't think that you have to wait until you're in menopause and you've gained 20 pounds and you've been hot flashing. You got a dry vagina that closed up and no libido in order to start them. You can start them when you start getting the symptoms. On top of that, like I said, diet. And don't go with what's the next best thing on the market. I do have my own, hormonal diet that I really want women to make their own, because we all need something different. Some women, they need higher carbs. Other women, they need to go very low carb. It really depends on what their hormones are doing. If they've got a slow thyroid and they've got a low adrenal system, so they've got low cortisol, then going super low carb is going to make them gain weight and feel like crap and make all those problems worse. So somebody like that would need to be on a higher, or moderate carb diet. But if you're somebody that gained a bunch of weight in your belly and you've got insulin resistance and you're puffy and inflamed, then you would do better on a lower carb diet, removing all the inflammatory foods, maybe doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, things like that. Because you really, at this point, this stage in the game where we're at, you have to be very specific about what you're doing, or else you can cause more harm than good. I can't tell you, ladies, how many women I've seen in the last few years who were destroyed by intermittent fasting and low carb diets, like destroyed. And I have no problem with those diets when needed. Like, I use them all the time in my practice for women that need that, but it became the most popular diets and every single woman jumped on them. And I see them, a year later where they've gained all their weight back, their hair's falling out, they haven't slept, they've gone into menopause, they're hot flashing like crazy because they took it too far. They went down to, fasting I just talked to a woman the other day who said to me, I just listened to a fasting podcast and they said that in order to lose weight as a woman, you need to at least fast at least 4 days out of the week. I said, is that not anorexia? Is that we're just putting a different name on it? That's starving yourself, not eating for 4 days and only eating 3 days out of the week. We would tell any teenage girl that she was anorexic, we check her into a mental hospital.
Oh, you're talking about complete fasting.
Like day long.
I thought like intermittent fasting.
No. These people who are two of the top fasting experts in Canada said 4 full days of fasting.
Well, let's get back to the hormones because that just blows my mind.
I know, me too. So be very careful, pick your diet carefully, and be open to changing it as your body changes. Because as you recover from thyroid problems, then you can start doing intermittent fasting and reap those benefits, the anti-aging benefits. If you've done keto and you've reversed your insulin resistance, get out of it as fast as you can and get metabolic flexibility. Get your stress under control. We are extremely sensitive with our cortisol and our stress levels when we are in our 40s and 50s. We're way more sensitive to it. And you can think about that. Were you not way more resilient when you were in your 20s and 30s? Like, I could party all night long, get up, work all day, and go right back and do the same thing all over again. And I was thriving, I don't know if I was thriving, but yeah,
I bounced in those days.
Back,
now
right?
I don't feel like I bounced very high at all.
No, exactly, Chris, exactly. So yeah, you really have to, when we hear, self-care and watch your stress, and it just goes right over our head because our society doesn't support that. Everywhere you turn, all it is go, 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 instant gratification. We need to be women, especially. We're now having to work just as much as a man does and take care of the kids and watch the house. It just piles up. So you really do need to be a lot more aware of your lifestyle and your stress levels as you're going through this time in order to really support your system. Liver, women, they shouldn't be drinking after 40, honest to God. And it really piss people off when I say that because they're like,
yeah, I bet
they really hold on to that because they're so stressed.
Right.
Women should not be drinking after the age of 40. Is that what you just said?
That is what I just said. I'm going to be shot for that, aren't I?
No, but I'm sure that is not. So that is probably one of those things that no one wants to hear. So, which is why you always hear the popular doctors and all that say, well, a glass a day or.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I would say, sure, if you want to have 2 glasses of red wine on a Friday night, occasionally, yeah, go for it. But unfortunately, women are drinking more than they ever have in the history of time. And it's not just 1 or 2 glasses of wine every few weeks. It is daily wine. I know, I can't tell you how many friends I have that they look forward to that glass of wine every single night, that they have tried to stop, but because everybody around them is drinking, they find it extremely challenging. But when it comes to weight loss, which is one of women's biggest complaints as they age, is that they can't lose that menopause belly. drinking will have one of the biggest impacts on that. And if you're drinking, your liver has to process that alcohol, and it will do that first and foremost. So things like your estrogen isn't going to get processed through that liver as well as it should be. So then it starts to recirculate itself. The studies show that even a couple glasses of wine a week increase your risk of breast cancer substantially, because it's inflammatory. Your liver is going to have to be, is going to be taken up by all the alcohol, the toxins. There's just nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing good about it except that it numbs you, which I get that. I was an alcoholic, so I don't judge. Oh. I've been sober for over 10 years, but I don't ever judge it. And I understand how challenging it is to quit. But, we'll go to all lengths.
Well, and it's harder to sleep too.
Yes, exactly.
And sleep definitely feeds in with healthy eating and exercise. And sleep really helps the stress reduction, which is kind of the main part of the problem with hormones and weight gain. Stress, I think, has a huge factor for me. I guess I'm talking more about my own life, but when I'm stressed, none of the pieces fall into place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sleep is another one that I have in my protocol, because without the sleep, you get more stress. Without the sleep, you become leptin resistant. So you want to eat more. You become more insulin resistant, which makes you eat more, gain more weight. So it's this horrible vicious cycle. And then if you're drinking on top of that, it's just, you're not going to have a good sleep, which is then going to make you more insulin resistant. And it just keeps going and going. So there's all these little components, digestive system. You have to make sure that you have a good gut system and good bacteria, and that you're eating well, that you're exercising so that you're able to process the hormone replacement and have it circulate properly through the body. So you want to move your body, whatever that looks like for you. I think weightlifting is the best for menopausal women, but if that's not your gig, then do something else. Go for a walk, grab a pack and put some weights in it and go hike up a mountain, but move your body. I think it's such an old advice, but it has to stay true, right? We still have to, as much as I can't stand the calorie counting and excessive exercise, you still have to watch what you eat, and you still got to exercise.
On your website, you have a question, and it says, did you know that hormone imbalance is the number one cause of weight loss resistance in women? And I read that and I said, no, I did not know that.
Yeah, 90% of weight loss resistance hormonal.
Okay. And weight loss resistance is basically what we've just been talking about, where you're eating well, you're exercising, and you're either gaining weight or just maintaining excess weight. I mean, where you cannot get to a healthy weight.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard women, even on that forum that I was on, some woman said, I drop my calories to 500 calories a day and I still can't lose weight. And that's the way it was for me. I could have gone down to 500 calories and I wouldn't have lost a single pound. And so when our hormones are out of balance, your body will start to hold on to that fat, and it's like you don't have the tools to let the fat go. And that's why I'm so really big into also the hormone replacement in menopause, because you're giving your body the tools it needs to let go of the weight. So it's not the magic bullet. You still got to eat well, and you still got to do you still have to exercise and do all those things, but you'll actually get the results. So if you're stuck, it's giving your system the tools to let go.
If we notice that we're slowly gaining weight, or we can't lose some weight, should we suspect that hormones are involved? I mean,
yeah.
Is
Always.
That why?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Especially if you're after the age of 35.
35.
Yes. And it can happen. Like I had a woman today, it didn't happen to her until she was 52, where just suddenly she gained 20 pounds in 6 months. And she's going, I didn't even do anything. What the heck just happened? I said, you just went into menopause. Like your hormones, it was like your hormones just were going down, down, down. And then for her, it was just that level, boom, weight gain. And for me, I went into menopause early. So at like 42, 43, I suddenly started packing on weight. My thyroid was crashed. And it was like instantaneous, all in my belly. And then my period started to go haywire. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess it's here. So I had to fix all of those things. And now the weight is coming back off.
You've mentioned a few things that I want to ask about. One is, first of all, leptin and insulin resistance. Leptin is a hormone.
It's a hunger hormone.
Hunger hormone.
And so when women start to lose their estrogen, we become more insulin resistant and leptin resistant. So insulin resistance has to do with being insensitive to the blood sugar in our body, and we'll just start packing on the weight and having blood sugar issues. Leptin resistance will always go hand in hand with insulin resistance. And that's our hunger hormone telling our brain that we're full. And so when you become resistant to that, you keep getting the signal that you're not full because your body isn't reading that signal properly. So women, you'll hear it from them where they'll say when they're in perimenopause or menopause, I'm just always hungry. I seem to be eating a lot more.
Cravings.
And I can't control the cravings. Exactly. And so a lot of that is because they lose their estrogen, and that has such a profound effect on leptin, insulin, liver enzymes, and cholesterol. So women's cholesterol will go up, insulin resistance goes up. Some will develop type 2 diabetes, and that is because you're missing your hormones.
Wow. Okay. And the other thing that you said was metabolic flexibility. So that if we're doing keto or some low carb thing, as soon as you got into a healthy weight, switch to...
Yes, metabolic flexibility.
What is metabolic flexibility?
So that's the ability for your body to move into ketosis and burn ketones, and then go over the next day and burn glucose.
Okay.
So most of us, we've only ever burned glucose for energy until the keto craze happened. And then people went hardcore the other way and only started burning ketones that went on the ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet. And that the state of ketosis was a backup source of fuel for times of starvation. So when women do it long term, you are signaling to the body that you are in deprivation, that there are no carbohydrates around. So we must be in winter. It must be time for famine. Hold on to the fat. And it'll actually start to lower your thyroid hormones, which will then lower the metabolism in order to preserve that weight. Does it happen to everybody? No. More so in fertile women because we are meant to carry children. That is it. That's all. So without food,
biologically speaking,
that's all the body on the inside knows is we're just here. That's why once you're not fertile, that's why the body starts to die. It's like you're no longer of use to the tribe. See you later. Obviously, that's not the way it is nowadays, but on the inside, your body is still works that way. The DNA, your genetics is still set up for that. So if you're on a ketogenic diet as soon as possible, and that's how I do my meal plans for my membership group, is I do a carb cycle, calorie cycle diet. So that there's days where you're intermittent fasting and you might drop down to 900, 1,000 calories that day and you're in ketosis. And then the next day you come out and you do a carb day and you're going to eat more of those good, healthy carbs that are not the devil, potato, sweet potato, fruits, all those good things. And then the next day you can go back into ketosis. And that's metabolic flexibility, is being able to change quickly in between the two, because most of us can't. Most of us are sugar burners, and it takes a long time to build up those enzymatic pathways to get flexible enough to go back and forth between ketosis, because it's very healthy to be in ketosis for short periods of time. And then it's good to be in carbs for a short period of time as well, and have times of fasting and times of feasting. That's working with our biology. It's how we were built, is to have those swings, not to be on that single plane of just eat meat or just eat no carb or just have super high carb and grains all the time. No, you're meant to be doing this.
You mentioned thyroid, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more. Can you talk about thyroid health. A lot of us deal with issues with the thyroid, and it's hard to know what the best answers are or even the right questions to ask.
Thyroid is a very misunderstood hormone. Unfortunately, the majority of the medical system doesn't understand it and doesn't know how to treat it. So I always tell women that have a thyroid problem, it is imperative, and it doesn't matter how much it costs you, you find yourself somebody that understands how to treat your thyroid, because majority of doctors will always give T4 only medication. Very, very few people, if any, do okay on T4 only medication. As we age, it is definitely a factor. A lot of women will develop hypothyroidism in menopause. And this is a slowdown. It's just like all the other hormones, just everything's slowing down. You need estrogen to make thyroid hormones. You need progesterone. You need cortisol. You need iron. There's so many, they all work interchangeably together. So if one's going down, it's going to affect the others. And so thyroid becomes affected. And so our metabolism will slow down. So there's, you always want to, it's a big topic. It's a whole nother, it's like we could do a whole podcast on just thyroid alone, but you want to make sure that you get it tested properly. And that may mean that you pay out of pocket for it, but you want to get, your free T4, free T3, TSH, TPO, TGA, and reverse T3. And you want to make sure that those are all in good range, because your doctor, if you're at, let's say the bottom of the range is 2.5 and you are 2.6, your doctor's going to tell you because it's in that range. When that T3 should be in the upper third, no matter what. T4 should be right in the middle. TSH should be below 2. Doctor won't tell you that. Reverse T3 should be under 12. And the top of the range is 21. So make sure that if you get your own labs done, you can go into my podcast. I talk lots about thyroid and know your ranges, and then get the help that you need in the proper medication.
Good.
We may have you back on to talk about thyroid in more detail.
Anytime.
And we've already sort of talked about eating. Well, is there anything that you recommend for eating? You've talked about carb, low carb, high carb, whatever. But is there any overriding advice that you give people about how to eat?
I think just going back to what I said earlier, which is don't get the tunnel vision on one specific diet, or just because keto worked for you for 3 months or 6 months and then it stopped. The answer isn't to do it harder. And that's same with veganism and every other diet out there. If it stops working for you, be open to changing it, because your body has changed and it may no longer need that style of eating. It may need something else. And our bodies are very adaptable. Doing weight loss in spurts is much better than trying to do it for long term. So you're better off to, just eat a good amount of calories for your body, where you're eating till you're satisfied, eating good foods, healthy whole foods, maintaining your weight, and then doing, a 2 to 4 week weight loss stint, and then pull out of it, because your body then won't lower its metabolism. It's going to lose more weight in the long run doing it like that, with much less harm to the body. And it will be much more sustainable in the long run, because you're doing it at a slower rate. And so if you can do it slow and steady, wins the race. But your body's very adaptable. So it will always adapt to that caloric intake. So if you drop your calories to 1,200, it's going to work for a couple of months. And then your metabolism is going to go, oh, we better come down here and meet this 1,200 calorie. And then you're going to have to go down to 1,000 calories. And then your body just stops losing weight, because you can't keep going down.
Right.
So work with your biology.
What about supplements? Are there supplements that you think we should all be taking? And how do you figure out how much to take of those? There's a lot of conflicting advice out there. Yes. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about supplements.
Yeah. Specifically for menopausal women, I do like to recommend things like a methylated B complex. Super simple, but every woman should be on it, especially if you're taking hormones. It's going to help with what's called receptor health. So it's going to help your body to take in those hormones. Then from there, it's very individual, but there are some amazing things like Maca. Maca is one of my fave for menopausal women. It's great for hot flashes, sex drive, adrenals. I prefer the brand called Feminescence. It's out of the United States. but I think they ship worldwide. And they've got specific strains of maca for where you are in your cycle. So if you're fertile, if you're perimenopausal or you're menopausal, or if you're a man, they've got a different strain of maca for that phase of life. Oh. And it's amazing. I've had women have such good results with that. And then really supporting the adrenal system. So testing the adrenal system, seeing where it's at. Do you need more cortisol? Are you in like an adrenal insufficiency, or do you have super high cortisol and you might need to be taking something that helps to bring those cortisol levels down? Because those herbs are very powerful and you want to be very specific. Like you can't just go pick up an adrenal formula and think, oh, I'm going to take this in order to support my adrenal system. It doesn't work like that, people. Even if they're adaptogens, there's some adaptogens that are better for high cortisol and there's some that are better for low cortisol. And so you have to be very specific with that. And with cortisol, you always want to test saliva.
You have to be tested first.
Yeah. Saliva or urine. You can't do blood work with cortisol. What else do I use? I'm trying to think of what's in my own little repertoire out there in my kitchen. Magnesium. I think every woman needs magnesium. We're very deficient in most minerals because of in the soil. I actually heard on a podcast recently that they're doing it on purpose so that because pharmaceutical companies run food companies or own food companies. I don't know if that's true, and they're saying that they're depleting our soils on purpose so that we get sick.
Wow, that seems pretty.
That could be.
I hate to think that.
It's a little far-fetched, but really, I mean, it could be true. Either way, we're still mineral deficient. Besides that, I love a good menopause supplement. I take one myself that has a lot of really good phytoestrogens in it. It really helps with my hormones, my mood, my hot flashes. It's got black cohosh in it, Dong Quai, Vitex, just really good supportive phytoestrogens. And if you're choosing to not go down the bioidentical hormone replacement route, then you really do want to get on something that has good phytoestrogens in it because they do react very mildly on the estrogen receptor. Same with foods like flax, fermented soy, if you can tolerate it. These are extremely good phytoestrogens. So a tablespoon of ground flaxseed in your diet every day can do wonders. It helps with what's called the beta receptors for estrogen, which is the more mild estrogen.
And fermented soy would be like miso.
Yeah, like as long as it's organic, you want tempeh, tofu, that kind of thing. But no soy milk or soy burgers or, the fake meat stuff. No. Yeah. It's really bad for you, that.
But miso, tofu.
Yes. It's great.
And you talked about intermittent fasting without becoming too extreme. You support that.
100%. Yes. If you don't have a undertreated thyroid or an undiagnosed thyroid problem, but you suspect it, or you have low cortisol, then intermittent fasting is an amazing tool. I put it into most of my programs in my weekly meal plan in my group. I put 3 days of intermittent fasting in every week, and they can choose to do it a little bit more or less, whatever matches their hormonal profile. And that's great. It's great for anti-aging. It's a great way to get into a caloric deficit without trying so hard, right? It's way easier to intermittent fast than it is just to overall cut calories every day. So I love the intermittent fasting. A lot of women need to do it with their cycle if they're cycling. So there's certain days of the month or weeks of the month that are better to fast on than others. But since your guys' audience is mainly menopausal, then, doing it 3 to 4 times a week is great. And in different lengths of time, you can go till 12 some days, till 2 on other days, till dinner on some days. But then you just want to make sure you're matching it with a feast day so your body doesn't slow down and lose the metabolic flexibility.
Which is why if you did it every single day, eventually your body would say, hey, there's just not a lot of food coming in.
Yep.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
All right.
It'll adjust.
Wow. So we've talked about a lot of things today, and I'm wondering if you could give us maybe 3 or 5 of the major tips that we should try to practice.
All right. Yeah. So I think number 1, lay the foundation. Don't wait to start. And when I say lay the foundation, you know what I mean? Like you got to, like I said, diet, gut, the alcohol, all those things, get those things in place. Don't wait. till you're a hot mess. And it's never too late. I really don't think I just put my mom on estrogen because her dad had Alzheimer's disease and she started to feel like she was getting foggy brain and losing her memory and she was freaking out and she had gained some weight. She's 67. I put her on estrogen. She lost her belly weight and her brain came back. And so you have to do it in a different way, and you want to work with a really knowledgeable practitioner because you have to go very low and slow, but it's never too late to start. It is ideal within a 10-year window. So 10 years into menopause, that's the most prime window that you want to replace your hormones in. So don't wait, replace. I think that's probably my biggest advice to women is please be open to replacing your hormones. There is so much misinformation out there about them. Bioidentical hormones are identical to yours. They do not cause cancer.
We never actually asked you what bioidentical hormones are. How are they different than hormones?
Regular HRT.
Hormone replacement therapy.
So regular HRT has been around for a long time. And actually it originated back thousands of years ago by the Chinese used to take dried urine from young women and ingest it when they were older to stay young.
Yum.
So it's just delicious. And then we moved on to pregnant horses' urine. So that's not much better. But my client today, she was using it.
Premarin. Yeah. Right. I remember that.
And that's when Premarin, so that came from pregnant horses' urine, estrogen. It was the number one prescribed medication in North America for a century. And nobody knows that. That was back in the 1950s. The number one prescribed med. And then a big study came out called the Women's Health Initiative where they used Premarin and fake progesterone, which is called progestin or Provera. The two mixed together was called Prempro. The one arm of the study that took Prempro had an increase in uterine cancer and breast cancer. And they stopped the study early. Within 4 years, they stopped the study because they saw this increase. Well, the arm of the study that just took Premarin,
that's where the whole thing
this is where it all started. Why all the doctors and everybody freaking out about it. The arm of the study that took just Premarin, which is terrible because you have to take it orally, which then it goes through what's called the first hepatic pass of the liver, and it causes inflammation, and it mostly promotes estrone, which is a fat-producing estrogen that is linked to breast cancer. Either way, guess what? The arm of the study that was just Premarin had a reduction in breast cancer rate. So the whole thing that estrogen is going to cause you breast cancer isn't true. It's the progestin that caused the increase in breast cancer. And guess where progestin is? In every single birth control pill. And do you see women hesitating to jump on birth control, or do you see doctors hesitating to prescribe it? But they won't prescribe bioidenticals. I had a woman that said, my doctor said it was going to cause me cancer, but she would give her birth control. So that's where all the misinformation came from. So that was the original HRT, which was taking it orally, comes from a horse. Our estrogen is not a horse's estrogen, so it's completely different.
Right, different species.
Different species. Now, bioidentical hormones are exactly the same as our own hormones. There's no difference. Your body cannot see the difference, unlike Premarin, which has multiple different types of estrogen don't have. So bioidentical estrogen specifically, you rub it on your skin. It's transdermal. If you take estrogen orally, whether it's bioidentical or Premarin, increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. So you always want to take it transdermally. And then, like I said, it's exactly the same as your own. Progesterone, they both come from yams and soy. Progesterone, you can take it orally, but it will mostly convert into what's called metabolites. It's really great for women because it's safe, but it's really good if you've got anxiety or insomnia from menopause. Oral progesterone works really well for that. Testosterone, you want to take transdermally as well. There's great suppositories, patches, injections that are all estrogen, testosterone based that are all bioidentical. Things like Viveldot, Estradot, these are patches. Those are all bioidentical. So exactly like your own hormones, testosterone gel, estrogen gel, suppositories, the E-string. There's many different ways of bringing on, and most women, all of them need something different. Like I use a combination of the estrogen patch and the estrogen gel because I find I have to top it up a little bit. And then I can use it kind of as needed because I'm still in perimenopause. I'm still bleeding sometimes. So every person's going to be different as far as what their body needs. But that's the difference between the two. It's just a huge difference. And so you always want to go with the bioidenticals.
Okay.
Because you have that choice. And so always, if your doctor tries to give you Premarin or put you on birth control or the IUD, a lot of women are put on IUDs in perimenopause because they're bleeding so heavy. No, that's progestin. So be very careful. Yeah. Taking these things, the breast cancer scare is estrogen's a growth hormone. So if you've got breast cancer cells in your breast and you start loading yourself with estrogen topically, it can cause that to grow because it's a growth hormone. But if you take progesterone with it, progesterone counteracts that growth. And if you don't have breast cancer cells, that's fine. But if you have cancer cells, that's where there is a bit of a problem. So you want to make sure that you are getting, thermographies done or mammography done. But you look, women that develop breast cancer, the highest cases are in menopausal women. If estrogen caused breast cancer or hormones did in general, then women in their fertile years would be riddled with it.
Oh.
And we're not.
I sort of interrupted you on the tips you were giving. You had said,
I think, and then work with somebody that understands hormones, because a lot of women just keep going back to their doctor or they go to a gynecologist. Know that your gynecologist, your medical doctor, your family physician, none of them are trained in perimenopause or menopause or bioidentical hormone. They have to go out and educate themselves on it. They're not taught it in medical school, so you cannot rely on them. Most of the time, they aren't very helpful. They are if you go to somebody like me, who's a coach, who can say, okay, here's my recommendations. Take this to your doctor. And that's a lot of the time they'll be like, yeah, okay, sure, try it, but they won't suggest it to you. They will give you the antidepressant. They'll give you the birth control pill. They'll give you what they know, and they don't know bioidentical hormone piece. So get the help you need. This is a very long period in our life. We want to make the best of it. It can be the best years of our life. Truly 100%. This is when we are the wisest. We can be our most confident, even though we're wrinkled and gray haired, whatever it might be. You can feel your best because you're no longer raising kids. You're letting go of so much struggle. And it's about you for the first time in your life. And so make it amazing. Don't settle for subpar like all those 17,000 women were doing on that forum where they're ready to go check themselves into a mental hospital. No way. Do not settle for anything but feeling amazing in these years and enjoy them for what they are. This is the second half of your life.
Right.
Embrace it. Embrace growing older. Embrace getting the gray hair and softening a little bit. And just make sure that you feel awesome on your inside.
We never really talked either about what your services are. You work with people in groups, also individually, I assume.
I kind of have something for every price point for people so that everybody, if they want the help, they can get it. So first off, my podcast has over 200 episodes. It's in the top 100 Apple podcasts for alternative health. So it's amazing. I love it. And so tons and tons of information on weight loss and hormones on there. So that's a really great place to start just for free information. I've got an awesome membership group where I've had 4,000 women go through it. It's been open for 5 years, and that's you just pay on a month-to-month basis. And it takes you through my signature program, which is all the things that we talked about here today, so that you are armed with all the knowledge that you need to sail through peri and postmenopause. And then I also have one-to-one coaching. So for people that want to get that special attention, I also offer that.
Great. Where can our listeners find you online?
KarenMartel.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Karen Martel Hormones.
Okay, great. And we will put links to that in the show notes.
Great.
Karen, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me. You guys are wonderful.
This was an incredible amount of information. Thank you. I know our listeners will have learned an awful lot.
Great. Yes. And I do Q&A podcasts usually once a month. So if people have questions for me about their own hormones, then you can always fill that out on my podcast page on my website.
Okay. And I assume we can find your podcast anywhere, but it is listed on your website too.
Yep.
Okay. And it is called The Other Side of Weight Loss.
As of right now, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll check on your website.
Could soon be the Karen Martel Show, just to keep it really simple. But
okay. Well, again, thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Karen gave us so much information today that I'm just totally overwhelmed. I think her information about bioidentical hormone treatment is fascinating.
Yes, she certainly knows a lot about it, and her website is huge. I really hope that, folks that are interested in this take a moment to check out her website and kind of explore through some of the things, because obviously she also does a podcast and very interesting information that you don't often get in the 15-minute meeting with your doctor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a treasure trove.
Yes, it sure is. And I do want to say that I took her free quiz on her website.
Yeah.
And if you do that, she then has free ebooks that sort of apply for however your responses to the quiz. And today I just got a free meal plan from her for a week. I was really impressed with the content and how professional, how nice everything looks.
Yeah, she really is a superstar. So it was great talking with her. I'm so glad that we had that opportunity. I also thought that was kind of interesting when she said, well, from exercise, I think I'm really into lifting for women over 50. Did you hear her say that? Yeah.
Yes.
I figured you would. Yeah. And I just thought, there's a lot of things that resonate of similar ideas and thought patterns to many of the other experts that we've talked to on the program here.
There was one more thing I really liked about what she said, and that was how she views eating and fasting and how we need to be willing to change and adjust what we're doing. It seems so often that we get told we must follow a certain path and that's it.
Right. And I think because she talks a lot about doing testing, whether it's blood testing, urine, saliva, et cetera, plus how you're feeling, she really understands that when women's hormones change, it's not identical for everybody. Obviously, everyone has their own, just like we look different, we're different on the inside too. And when it comes to eating and fasting and exercise and all of that, everybody kind of needs their own path. There's certain guidelines, but it's great to be able to change back and forth and not just get stuck in a rut that might not be working, especially.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would love to hear what our listeners have to say about our conversation with Karen.
Yes, if you want to share your thoughts with us, please leave a message on our website, becomingellie.com, or on any of our social media sites. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
If you go to our website, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. That way you'll know what's going on in our world. Also, please join our Becoming Ellie private Facebook group.
Yes, and I also wanted to take a second to say, if you enjoyed what you heard or found it interesting today, please forward this episode to a friend who might also be struggling with some of these issues. A lot of these things never get talked about, and we'd love to have more listeners. Feel free to share the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast with a friend.
Yes, word of mouth is the best kind of recommendation. It's been so good talking with you today, Chris. See you on the next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50.
Looking forward to it. Bye-bye now.
Bye.